everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome back to the DIY Designer. My name's Orly Shani. If you've never been here, thanks for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. If during the video you enjoy what you see, I really hope that you'll tell me so in the comments section and maybe subscribe, because man, that's a huge help here on the YouTubes. So today we're gonna be doing something that funnily, is that a word?
I don't think
funny.
so.
But funny enough, was something that I did when I had a clothing line. So some of you guys might not know this. I had a clothing line called TUC+WES. One of the things I did on it was I did like one of a kind or limited edition pieces, very similar to what I actually do on the channel. One of my favorite styles that we did were these one-of-a-kind bodysuits. So I would go to tons of different thrift stores and I would find just really cool graphics, generally in the men's section. And then we created a pattern for a bodysuit. And we would then cut them into different size bodysuits so that you had this like really fun old retro graphic cut into this really cute kind of like high cut tank top bodysuit. And I realized, why don't I show you guys how to do it? It is such a fun DIY and it's completely custom because you're gonna use a bottom and a top and combine them to create a pattern to cut out of your shirt. I'm gonna make sort of like a thong style, and that's because I like wearing bodysuits with skirts or with leather pants and I don't wanna see those lines. But whatever bottoms you choose, that's up to you, and that's how you'll make the bottom of yours. Okay, let's get into materials. This is gonna be a solid episode. All right, grab that graphic tee and lay it flat and make sure to even out all of the side seams and any folds. Some tees will torque, old vintage tees will torque, so just do your best to make sure that it's even. Now you're gonna take a tank top that you're using as your guide. Ideally, this is a shirt that's made of a similar material, so it'll fit you the same. Make sure the shoulder seams are lined up and make sure that the graphic is centered in it. Then at that point, you're just going to cut it out, giving yourself whatever seam allowance you want when you're sewing. You could take your shirt and fold it in half using one side as a guide for the second, but because this is an old vintage tee and it did have a little twisting in it, I didn't want to do that. Now I'm taking my bodysuit, which fits me at exactly the right height, so I'm able to line up my shoulders and use the bottom as a guide. If you don't have a bodysuit, just take your measuring tape, measure from high point shoulder to that high point on your hip bone where you want it to cut. Then take your measuring tape, lay it down, and you'll grab your underwear, your bathing suit bottom, whatever you're using, and you'll line it up to that place. Now I'm just cutting out the bottom with the same seam allowance as I gave myself on the top. Okay, so you can see it really starts to come together. This is basically the structure. At this point, we just want to sew a nice clean hem on the shoulder seams and the bottom. If you have a serger, you'll want to serge it first and then fold it over and sew it. I don't, so I'm just doing a simple straight stitch. It's much easier to do this while it's open before you sew your side seams. Now I'm just doing the same thing to the bottom. This is going up over the hip bone and down into the very bottom. Just fold it over, giving yourself that 1/4 inch or whatever seam allowance you did, and you can see everything is nice and clean finished. So at this point, I need to sew my side seams. You want to flip it inside out, face to face. Make sure to pin your underarm seam and make sure to pin the hip seam. Those two places are the only places that need to be perfectly even in order for it to look nice and clean. Now, again, a simple straight stitch all the way down both sides, seaming it up. So trim off all of your excess threads and we're just gonna flip it inside out. Now, this is the last step. We're basically done. I am deciding to use snap tape so that I can easily get in and out of the bodysuit. I love snap tape and it's super useful. So you wanna cut it just like a 1/4 inch on either side bigger so that you can fold over the ends and they won't fray on you. One thing I would recommend though before you sew is like double check how it's actually gonna function so that you don't accidentally put the snaps on the wrong side and then you can't get into it. So just pin everything into place, and then when you sew, you're going to sew across the bottom, over the side, on the top, and back down the other side, basically creating a square and fusing it into place. I'm sorry. I don't. Why? Oh, God. All right, moving on to the next shirt. I wanted to create a version that was an actual regular sleeve, not a tank top. So I used my bodysuit to cut the bottom. And then because this was a newer shirt, I was able to fold it in half and cut my side seams at the same time. So I'm taking that t-shirt that fits me and is made of a similar material and using it as a guide. This I just sort of eyeballed. I went up the side and then connected the sleeve, creating like an L shape to create my new sleeve. Now I'm just sewing the L-shaped closed. Now just a tip, tip, whenever you do an underarm like that, you wanna make sure to go in and snip the seam just so that it lays flat and you don't get any pulling or pleating. Now you're gonna do the same thing on this one, obviously. Hem your sides on your hip bones so that they're nice and clean, add your snap tape, and that one is done and ready to go. If you guys have a shorter shirt that you wanna use and it's not long enough to create the extension, you can create your own extension using some of the excess fabric that you cut off. So just create and extend the line, making the bottom long enough to function as a bodysuit. Now this was the last one. I wanted to make the hip on this one a little higher cut, so I took my bodysuit and I slid it up about 3 or 4 inches higher than I did on the first one. Then I just, again, use it as a guide, and this was a newer shirt, so I was able to fold it in half, use the one side I cut as a guide for my second, and I was perfectly even. So now, again, simple hem on my shoulders and on my hip bone. You wanna press all of your hems when you're done. That's gonna make it all look really crisp and finished and nice and clean. Now you just add in your snap tape. Ideally, in a perfect world, I would have had white snap tape. I didn't, but again, this is hidden, so it doesn't really matter. All right, I'm gonna try these bad boys on. For those of you that don't know how to sew, just know that t-shirts look great when they're cut raw. That's how muscle tees are. So if you just wanna try this out and actually make the body of it and the pattern of it, know that you can keep everything raw. Just sew your side seams, sew in the little snap tape on the bottom, and leave those things raw. It's a great way to learn. And then as you get better, you can work on doing all of the actual hems and all the clean finishing. All right, I'm gonna go try them on. Let's do it. I've been in your waters.